Welcome to Unspoken Affairs. In today's story, I want to take you on a journey. It's not just a memory, and it's not just an ordinary family moment. It's about how life, in its quiet and subtle way, can surprise you when you least expect it. It's about rediscovery, about confronting the silence that often settles between people who love each other but don't always know how to say the words that matter most. So sit with me, lean into this moment, and let me tell you what happened when I thought everything in my life was predictable, steady, maybe even boring, only to realize that one simple trip had the power to change everything. We've all had those moments when life feels like it's moving in circles. You wake up, you go through the motions, and you think you've already figured it all out. That was me. I thought my life had settled, and in some ways I believed my relationship with my son Henry was set in stone. He's my only child, and of course, we were close. But you know how it goes. After a certain age, things slip into a rhythm. Predictable dinners, polite check-ins, the occasional phone call where you talk about the weather or the errands you've run that day. Comfortable, yes, but not deep. Not the kind of connection that fills your heart the way it once did. I accepted it, maybe even expected it. Told myself this was what life became when people grew older. For years, I hadn't even noticed how much of myself had slipped away. My husband had passed a few years earlier, and after that, the house grew quieter than I knew how to bear. I learned to live inside that quiet. I learned to be content with silence, even when it felt heavy. Henry was in his 30s by then, busy with his own world, his own life, and I didn't want to burden him with the emptiness I carried. To me, our relationship felt secure enough, steady. But what I didn't see was that steady doesn't always mean fulfilled. When Henry suggested we take a trip together, a weekend in the mountains, just the two of us, I brushed it off at first. Honestly, I wasn't excited. Traveling hadn't been something I'd done much of since my husband died. I told myself I didn't need it. But Henry had that voice, that way of speaking, that tugged at me in a way no one else could. "Be good for you, Mom," he'd said, soft and kind, and before I even realized it, I had agreed. That's the thing about being a mother. Sometimes, even when you're unsure, you say yes because your child needs you to. Or maybe, in truth, because you still need them, too. So we packed our bags, just 2 suitcases, some sweaters, a few books, and a lingering uncertainty I carried in my chest. The drive was quiet but easy, the kind where you look out the window and let the scenery blur while your thoughts wander. By the time we reached the cabin, the sun was setting low over the valley, painting the mountains in gold and soft shadows. The cabin itself was rustic but beautiful, big wooden beams, large windows that opened to a sweeping view of the trees, and a fireplace that seemed to promise warmth against the chill in the air. Henry had thought of everything. He always did. He'd booked the place, made sure we had enough groceries, even remembered to bring my favorite tea. He was thoughtful in a way that sometimes caught me off guard. Thoughtful in ways that reminded me just how much of his father lived on inside him. We settled in quickly, unpacking in silence. I remember standing by the window, watching the last light fade, feeling the mountain air brush cool against my skin. There was something about the stillness there that was both comforting and unnerving. No traffic, no ringing phones, no distractions, just him and me. It had been years since it was just us, without family gatherings or busy holidays to keep us occupied. Years since I'd looked at him not as the boy I raised, but as the man he had become. That first night, we ate a simple dinner by the fire. The flames cracked and danced in the hearth, filling the cabin with warmth and the scent of wood smoke. Conversation began as it always did, with small talk. We spoke about his work, about errands, about the news. But slowly, something shifted. Henry started asking me questions about the past, about his father. He wanted to know about the trips we had taken when we were young, the places I loved most, the moments that made me happiest. I told him about Paris, about how his father and I had wandered through cobblestone streets, laughing at things that made no sense, eating pastries by the river, feeling like the world belonged to us. As I spoke, I could see something soften in Henry's eyes. He wasn't just listening, he was absorbing, storing my words as if they mattered more than anything else in that moment. For the first time in years, it felt like I was being truly seen. And then when the plates were cleared and the fire burned low, Henry cleared his throat. It was a small sound, but I knew it. The sound he made when something was on his mind. "Mom," he said, his voice tentative. "There's something I've been wanting to tell you." I set my teacup down and looked at him. His hands were tapping lightly against the mug in front of him, and his expression was thoughtful, almost vulnerable. "What is it?" I asked. He hesitated, then said quietly, "I've been thinking about us. About our relationship since Dad passed. We've settled into something. Something safe, but not really real. I don't want us to lose that connection we used to have. I don't want to miss out on what's left." His words hit me like a soft blow. Not painful, but startling. I hadn't realized he felt that way. I thought I was the only one who noticed the silence, the emptiness that had crept into the space between us. "I didn't know you felt like that," I admitted. "I'm sorry, Henry. I didn't mean to pull away. I guess I just got lost in my own grief." He shook his head quickly. "It's not about blame. I just want us to talk again. About real things. About what matters. I miss that." There, it was the heart of it all. Not anger, not disappointment, just longing. Longing for connection, for the closeness we once had. My chest tightened, and for the first time in so long I felt tears prick my eyes. "I miss it too," I whispered. That night, we talked until the fire burned to embers. We spoke about the things we'd never said, our fears, our regrets, our hopes for the future. I laughed harder than I had in years, cried in ways I hadn't allowed myself to. And through it all, something inside me began to heal. For so long, I had been carrying the weight of silence, believing it was easier not to speak than to confront what was missing. But Henry had given me a gift, the chance to let go, to breathe again. The next morning we woke slowly, the light of dawn spilling through the curtains. The air was crisp, the kind that wakes you fully with each breath. We sat together at the small kitchen table, sipping coffee, watching fog drift lazily down the mountainside. It was quiet, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was the kind of quiet you share with someone who understands you, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. And then, as if determined not to let the silence last too long, Henry asked me, "Mom, what's something you've always wanted to do but never did?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about it for a long moment. I had lived a life full of responsibilities, raising a family, keeping a home, working, managing everything that needed to be managed. I had traveled some, seen places I loved, but dreams, the ones just for me. I had tucked those away so long ago, I almost forgot they were there. Finally, I said, "I always wanted to take a painting class, but I never did." He raised an eyebrow. Curious, why not? "Life," I answered simply. There was always something else. The house, the bills, you, your father. I never made the time. "That's sad," he said softly, shaking his head. "You should have done it." His words struck deeper than I expected. It wasn't just about painting. It was about everything I had put aside. It's about the parts of myself I had buried so deeply I forgot they existed. I swallowed hard, then managed a small smile. "Maybe it's not too late," I said, though my voice trembled with uncertainty. The day stretched out with walks through the woods. Golden leaves crunching under our feet, the crisp scent of pine heavy in the air. The mountains felt endless, timeless, as though they had been waiting for us to arrive. At the lake, we stood together in silence, the water reflecting the sky like a mirror. It was peaceful, but more than that, it was grounding. For once, it felt like we weren't mother and son bound by roles and routines, but two people, just people, rediscovering each other in the evenings. We'd sit on the porch, sipping wine, as the sun dipped behind the peaks. Sometimes we spoke, sometimes we didn't, but always there was connection. Always there was the quiet knowledge that we were no longer drifting apart. Each conversation pulled us closer. Each silence became a thread weaving us together again by the last night. As we sat by the fire one final time, I felt something inside me shift. "I'm glad we came," I said softly, my eyes fixed on the flames. "This trip, it's given me more than I expected. It's made me think, made me feel things I'd buried for too long." Henry smiled, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "I'm glad too, Mom. I think we both needed this, to remember who we are. Just be us again." Simple words, but powerful ones, because that was the truth. This trip wasn't just about mountains or cabins or quiet nights by the fire. It was about remembering. Remembering that life doesn't end when loss comes. Remembering that silence doesn't have to mean distance. Remembering that love in its purest form is not about routine. It's about presence. It's about choosing to see and be seen. About connection. When we packed our bags to leave, I felt different, lighter. Not because grief was gone yet. Never. Truly leaves, but because I realized I wasn't as alone as I thought. Henry was there, he always had been. And now, maybe for the first time in years, I was truly there too. That weekend changed me. It reminded me that life isn't about waiting for the pain to fade. It's about leaning into the people who matter most, letting yourself rediscover joy, hope, and dreams, even the ones you thought you had lost forever. And so, what began as a simple trip to the mountains became a turning point. A reminder that family is not about the roles we play, but about the heart we share. And in that small cabin, surrounded by silence and firelight, I found something I didn't even know I had been searching for. I found my son again, and maybe more importantly, I found myself.